Okay, let's look at what is the best diet to increase testosterone for men, and are there any supplements that actually do increase testosterone? There is undoubtedly a huge amount of misinformation out there on how to increase testosterone via diet and supplementation. So I want to give you some factual information to help optimize our testosterone levels. It is absolutely naive to think that popping a supplement or eating a certain food will increase testosterone. Why? Well, let's first look at what testosterone is made from. And surprisingly to most, the magic ingredient is cholesterol, which is also the substrate for all our other steroid hormones like estrogen and progesterone and androstenedione. So cholesterol and muscle research gains, for example, a study in 2007, they found that cholesterol may also be good for our muscle gains. In this study, 49 elderly individuals completed a 12-week strength training program with nutritional guidelines. Retrospective analysis of participants' nutritional logs showed a linear dose-response relationship between dietary cholesterol and lean body mass increase. In other words, the more cholesterol they consumed, the more muscle they gained. This relationship held up when protein and fat intake were also controlled for. In fact, in the first study of cholesterol's effect on lean body mass, the authors also found a significant correlation between saturated fat intake and lean body mass growth. Many diets with a high cholesterol content are also rich in saturated fat, so this is not too surprising, but it leaves open the possibility that cholesterol is actually irrelevant and it's all about saturated fat instead. So to find out what the research team did, they contacted Dr. Reichman, who was the principal investigator of the above study on cholesterol, and he actually confirmed that they controlled for total fat intake, protein intake, and energy intake in the analysis on cholesterol, which strongly suggesting cholesterol plays an independent role for muscle growth. Then there was another study there where researchers compared a high and a low cholesterol diet in young, healthy adults. The high cholesterol group had nearly 3 times more myofibrillar protein synthesis rate 22 hours after intense resistance exercise than the low cholesterol group. And myofibrillar protein synthesis is a measure of muscle growth, specifically how quickly our muscles are creating new proteins. So these findings again suggest a high cholesterol diet is beneficial for muscle growth. Then there was another study in 2017 which also found that whole eggs, for example, stimulate more myofibrillar protein synthesis than the same amount from just egg whites. Now the yolk is very rich in cholesterol, so knowing that cholesterol stimulates myofibrillar protein synthesis, it's likely that it's the cholesterol in whole eggs that makes them great for building more muscle tissue. Then a study conducted at the University of Worcester and published in the Journal of Steroid Biochemistry and Molecular Biology, they found that low-fat diets decrease men's testosterone levels by around 10 to 15%, and the study was a systematic review and meta-analysis which combined together the results of 6 well-controlled studies with a total of 206 participants. The study first put men on a high-fat diet, 40% of their diet coming from fat, and then transferred them to a low-fat diet with 20% come from fat. And what they found again was the testosterone levels decreased by 10 to 15% on average, particularly barred with vegetarian low-fat diets, causing decreases in testosterone up to 26%. The authors linked their results in similar studies conducted in humans and mice. The studies found high intakes of monounsaturated fats found in things like olive oil, avocados, and nuts may boost testosterone production. However, the omega-6 polyunsaturated fats predominantly found in vegetable oils may damage the cell's ability to produce testosterone. This is because highly unsaturated fats, such as polyunsaturated fats, are more prone to oxidation, which can increase cell damage. So increase in testosterone naturally with saturated fat. There have been multiple studies which have shown that healthy saturated fats are positively correlated to healthy male testosterone levels, and that saturated fat is required by several pathways within the body to support the endocrine system. Now, an interesting study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition showed that the androgenic hormone levels of male vegetarians were significantly lower than the levels of testosterone of those that included higher amounts of saturated fats in their diet. Another study out of Finland, they also showed that a diet low in saturated fat resulted in a decrease in male androgen levels and were completely reversed when dietary fat was reintroduced. So study after study then have shown that the increased amount of dietary fat results in increase of testosterone. However, the types of fat that are most commonly associated with higher testosterone and dehydrotestosterone, also known as DHT, are the saturated fatty acids and the monounsaturated fatty acids. Another study then published in the Journal of Applied Physiology, they also found that whilst total fat intake and saturated fat intake helped to boost testosterone levels in the sample of 12 active men, higher levels of the omega-6s, which we've just seen, will actually have the opposite effect. Then a study published then in the Asian Journal of Andrology, they looked at the dietary patterns of over 200 men, particularly regarding how their food habits affected hormone levels and testicular function. And what their research suggested was that eating trans fats, which you'll find in lots of processed foods, may lower testosterone levels in the body, while again, too many omega-6 fatty acids appear to reduce testicular size and function. And then you're looking why the polyunsaturated fats might also affect the production of testosterone, depending on the type. So we also know then the omega-3 is a polyunsaturated fat, but this has been shown to actually increase testicle size and also improve testicular function. However, polyunsaturated fats, which are found in many of the most common vegetables, things like canola, soybean, corn, cottonseed, they are highly detrimental to testosterone production. This study published in the journal Hormone and Metabolic Research, what they found that men who consumed a diet rich in omega-3s exhibited higher testosterone levels than those who did not consume omega-3s. And I test omega-3s and they're low in the vast majority of people I test on. There was another study that also found that men who supplemented with fish oil, they also experienced a significant increase in testosterone levels compared to a placebo group. We've also looked then at how ingesting more protein can also help the body to increase androgen receptor activity, where testosterone will land. High protein intake can also decrease sex hormone binding globulin. So this then allows more free testosterone to be available. And this can also then, as I've said, upregulate androgen receptor activity, which is absolutely crucial, which we'll see shortly. Researchers then at a Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston, what they found is that glucose ingestion was associated with a decrease in the male hormone testosterone. The study published in the journal Clinical Endocrinology showed that 75 grams of sugar intake causes a 25% drop in testosterone levels for up to 2 hours after consumption. In order to investigate the physiological impact of glucose on testosterone levels, researchers randomized 74 men from the ages of 19 to 74 years of age. All participants underwent a 75 gram glucose tolerance blood test at baseline, as well as 30, 60, 90, and 120 minutes later. And a number of biomarkers were measured, including levels of sex hormone binding globulin, which is used to evaluate men for low testosterone. The higher SHBG is, the less available testosterone is to the cells. Among the test subjects, 57% of the men had normal glucose tolerance, 30% had impaired glucose tolerance, and 30% had newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes. But upon analyzing the results, the researchers noticed that glucose consumption was associated, as previously mentioned, with a 25% decrease in testosterone levels, which remain suppressed at 120 minutes compared with baseline. Now, at least 10 of the 66 men with normal circulating testosterone at the start of the experiment experienced a reduction in the testosterone levels, which were well then below what is known as hypogonadal range, which is low testosterone. The findings also reveal that the effect of glucose on testosterone levels is independent of glucose tolerance threshold for each participant in regard to their body mass index. The research findings suggest that glucose induces an important reduction in total testosterone levels in men, which appears to be similar across the spectrum of glucose tolerance responses. We also know there are also so many vitamins and minerals that are needed to actually turn cholesterol into testosterone. These vitamins are things like A, C, and E, B3, B6, folate, iron, zinc, and magnesium. So wouldn't it make more sense ensuring we have a fundamental nutrient requirements in place before we start popping some of these so-called tester boosters, things like Tonga Ali, that's not essential for testosterone production. Mitochondria are also essential for testosterone. Now, these tiny structures in the cells help to produce energy. They're known as a powerhouse of the cell. However, the mitochondria also help in steroid hormone production, including testosterone. Emerging research shows that the health of the mitochondria is significantly connected to testosterone production and energy metabolism. And the mitochondria cannot function efficiently without all the B vitamins, CoQ10, iron, magnesium, and things like L-carnitine. So it's essential. If you want more optimal levels of testosterone, you have to ensure the mitochondria are functioning efficiently. Also, the mitochondria are very susceptible to damage from environmental toxins, heavy metals, and certain medications. So the process then to make steroid hormones such as testosterone is something called steroidogenesis. And that begins with cholesterol, which is then transported into the mitochondria. Once inside, it undergoes this series of chemical reactions to become something known as pregnenolone, the first steroid in the pathway. Pregnenolone is then converted into other hormones, eventually resulting in testosterone. Let's dive a little bit deeper into how mitochondria support production of testosterone, a process that starts, as I said, with cholesterol and then heavily depends on mitochondrial function. The first big step in testosterone is actually getting the cholesterol into the mitochondria. This is made possible by a special protein, abbreviated STAR, steroidogenic acute regulatory protein. Now consider STAR as a gatekeeper. It helps move cholesterol from the outer mitochondrial membrane to the inner membrane where hormone production begins. Now, without enough STAR, cholesterol builds up outside the mitochondria and can't be used properly, causing testosterone production to drop. Something like chrysin, which belongs to a group of chemicals called flavonoids, has been shown to significantly increase STAR promoter activity. Now let's look then at where is testosterone made. Testosterone is mainly made in the testicles, approximately 4 to 10 milligrams per day. A small amount is also made by the adrenal glands, which, as we know, are small glands that simply sit on top of our kidneys. So when testosterone then actually enters a target cell, three things can happen to testosterone. Testosterone can either attach to an androgen receptor and cause a moderate androgenic effect on the cell, or two, an enzyme called 5-alpha reductase can convert testosterone into dihydrotestosterone, which is an androgen which is about 3 to 5 times more powerful than testosterone. Then DHT then attaches to an androgen receptors and causes a significant androgenic effect on the cell. Or three, an enzyme called aromatase will convert testosterone into estrogen, which then attaches to different receptors and exerts estrogen effects on the cell, kind of exactly the opposite of what androgens would do. So no matter how high the circulating testosterone levels are, if the body's androgen receptors are sleeping on the job, then three will happen. This results in a relative androgen insufficiency, a much higher level of estrogenic activity than androgenic activity in the body. And then androgen hormones then can't achieve anything without androgen receptors to help them facilitate the cellular processes needed to carry out these functions. So in a sense, then, you can say that androgen receptors are the mechanisms that actually unlock the full potential of our androgen hormones like testosterone. But what exactly are androgen receptors and how do they work? Because there's no point increasing testosterone if they can't get to the site. The number of androgen receptors in a cell can affect how sensitive the cell is to testosterone. For example, if a cell has high number of androgen receptors, it will be more sensitive to testosterone and respond more strongly to the hormone. And of course, on the other hand, if a cell has a low number of androgen receptors, it will be less sensitive to testosterone and respond less strongly to the hormone. Makes total sense. So let's see then that testosterone, first of all, relies on these androgen receptors to facilitate the development of secondary male characteristics. Increasing our androgen receptors then can help to enhance testosterone's effect on the body, which can lead to improved muscle growth, bone density, other aspects of males' physical health. So, for example, a deficiency in vitamin D is associated with an inhibitory effect of testosterone on androgen receptors and a decline in testosterone levels. It's possible that short bouts of UVB radiation from sun exposure could help boost androgen receptors for up to 24 hours. If you're suffering from symptoms of androgen insufficiency, get your vitamin D levels checked. It's actually better, if I'm honest with you, to get your vitamin D from sunlight exposure, at least if you believe the results of this incredible study conducted in 1939, which showed that 5 days of UV light exposure to a men's chest area increased total testosterone levels by up to 120%. What's interesting, I found, is when the genitals were exposed to UV radiation for the same amount of time, the increase in testosterone skyrocketed to 200%. So get some sunlight on your nuts. There's also some evidence that bright light exposure will signal the brain to release luteinizing hormone, which then triggers the Leydig cells in the testicles to produce testosterone. So even just being out in the sun for that vitamin D hit is essentially a good idea for optimizing testosterone. And another study also found that consuming just over 3,000 IUs of vitamin D3 a day was enough to significantly reduce sex hormone binding globulin, which, as I've said previously, will then increase our free testosterone. Also, magnesium has been found to unbind testosterone molecules from the binding protein SHBG, which is also then going to create a lot more available testosterone. It also upregulates the androgen receptor. And also magnesium has been shown that not only does it reduce sex hormone binding globulin, but it can also increase insulin sensitivity as well. Now, in this study, subjects were given 1 gram of magnesium per day. They took part in a vigorous training routine or were told to remain sedentary. What happened was that both free and total testosterone levels shot up in the sedentary and the exercising subjects, obviously more in the guys who train. So again, it's showing us the effects of things like these simple things that minerals can do, like vitamin D and magnesium. The mineral boron also inhibits sex hormone binding globulin. And even in studies, just using 6 milligrams a day was shown to increase significantly testosterone and also to lower estrogen levels. We also know as well, when you combine boron with magnesium, as a side note, boron significantly enhances magnesium absorption. Men in certain studies have shown that a lower rate of estrogen, suggesting that an increase in boron promoted a higher rate of conversion of total testosterone to free testosterone. So boron is shown to have this effect as well. And then we can even look at some of these herbal extracts for doing this as well. We know that nettle root extract has been shown to lower SHBG. SHBG, as we know, actively inhibits the level of free testosterone. But researchers found that nettle root extract has a greater affinity for SHBG than does testosterone. So as a result, SHBG, sex hormone binding globulin, more readily binds to the constituents of nettle root extract, successfully counteracting its effect and thereby then again increasing the levels of free testosterone. And fish oil has also been shown to reduce sex hormone binding globulin, again there then releasing more free testosterone available for the cells. And L-carnitine is an incredible product for significantly increasing testosterone receptor concentration. One study showed that L-carnitine was shown to significantly increase testosterone androgen receptor concentration after only 21 days of supplementation in resistance-trained men. And the increase in receptor availability is believed then to lead to a greater potential of free testosterone, increasing our ability to build muscle tissue. So we know free testosterone is the most usable form of testosterone available for the development of muscle growth. And studies also show that a 3-week course on just 2 grams of L-carnitine per day bring about an increase of approximately 15% in the androgen receptor protein content. For best results, you should take the supplement around 30 minutes before your training sessions, approximately 2 grams. That's what I do. Heavy resistance training as well has also been shown to upregulate androgen receptors and increase protein expression after just 3 exercise sessions. But also be careful you don't overtrain, which today not many people actually train that hard anyway. But overtraining can downregulate androgen receptors for more serious athletes watching this video. Explosive exercises like Olympic lifting, plyometric and sprinting type movements, they can actually have the greatest effect on androgen receptor sensitivity. So introduce those types of movements. Now, there are also a few interesting studies that have shown that even a short-term fast, androgen receptors become more sensitive towards testosterone than what they would if you eat on a constant basis. And thyroid hormones, specifically T3 triiodothyronine, they upregulate also androgen receptors and downregulate estrogen receptors. So ensuring optimum thyroid function and hormone production is essential for androgen receptor sensitivity. And unfortunately, many things interfere with thyroid function today. It is also essential to limit how much of our testosterone gets converted into the estrogens via the aromatase enzyme. Zinc is one of the best natural aromatase inhibitors for men. The reason for this is because it's been proven that zinc is a powerful estrogen blocker and helps to inhibit aromatase enzyme, which, as I said, helps to convert testosterone into estradiol. A study also looked into how zinc could influence the levels of estrogen in men, and they showed us some interesting results. And the results were from one study discovered that a zinc deficiency in any of the subjects resulted in higher levels of estrogen receptors. And this proved how zinc plays a big role in lowering estrogen in men. Though I have to say, I have never seen a zinc deficiency from all the thousands of lab tests that I've carried out. Magnesium is one of the biggest deficiencies I see in omega-3 fatty acids and selenium. There's another interesting fat known as conjugated linoleic acid, and this has also been shown to inhibit the conversion of testosterone into estradiol. Okay, and then you have the flavonoid then called apigenin, which comes from foods like celery, has also been shown to lower the aromatase enzyme. And also those who don't get enough vitamin C have also been shown to have increased aromatase levels. So along with apigenin, I have to say chrysin has been shown in studies to be one of the most promising flavonoids for fighting aromatase. Isolated from things like blue passion flower, chrysin is believed to bind directly to aromatase, blocking its activity. Now, in a study funded by the Life Extension Foundation, 22 male subjects were given 750 milligrams of chrysin and 10 milligrams of bioperine, which is a pepper extract, which is known to increase the absorption rates of many things like chrysin. And they did this twice daily for 30 days. when compared to their baseline testosterone levels and estradiol levels, free testosterone levels rose by 40%, estradiol levels decreased by as much as 40%. These results offer conclusive evidence that herbal extracts such as chrysin can effectively and quickly inhibit testosterone aromatization to estrogen. Then we have resveratrol, which is a naturally occurring polyphenol in the skin of red grapes, mulberries, blueberries. Its popularity has been soaring since we know it's a great antioxidant. But at higher doses, though, resveratrol has been found to raise testosterone levels, block estrogen synthesis, and possibly activate androgen receptors. And then, as I said, in sort of at higher doses in test tube studies, they've shown that resveratrol can increase the amount of the protein star, which we spoke about earlier on, in cells, and thus increase the conversion from cholesterol to testosterone inside the testicles. There's another great compound called indole-3 carbonyl found in broccoli, Brussels sprouts, kale, which acts in a number of ways, from denaturing aggressive estradiol and its byproducts to rebalancing estrogen receptor sites. Now, studies have demonstrated that indole-3 carbonyl increases the ratio of something known as the 2-hydroxyestrogen to 16-alpha-hydroxyestrogen. Now, for men, this might mean a decrease in prostate cancer risk. And a study that examined the association of prostate cancer risk with estrogen metabolism, the authors said results of this case-controlled study suggest that estrogen metabolic pathway favoring the 2 pathway over the 16 pathway may reduce the risk of clinically evident prostate cancer. Now, 4 very other important nutrients for decreasing estrogen, which is made from our testosterone, for potentially becoming very problematic to a man's health, are B6, B12, folate, and magnesium. Why? Well, without these optimal levels of these nutrients, you will have less of the COMT enzyme, catechol methyltransferase enzyme, and this enzyme is essential for deactivating estrogen's potential for going down the 4 and 16 pathways, which can be carcinogenic. So I hope you now have a better understanding of what the appropriate diet is for optimizing how testosterone levels are, how important cholesterol is for the process of testosterone production, also along with some fundamental supplements that will enhance mitochondrial function, lower sex hormone binding globulin, also upregulate our androgen receptors, limit the conversion of testosterone into estrogen, and also ensure that once we've made estrogen out of testosterone, they don't go down the carcinogenic pathways. Now, I hope you got something out of this video. For more information on my other courses and videos, please go to Phil Richards Nutrition Lab.